we don't necessarily have to count calories, measure our food, weigh our food, assign scores or numbers to the types of foods that we're eating, because those things are really terrible for adherence rates.
Mm-hmm.
No one is going to, constantly score their food or count calories in perpetuity.
Welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. My name is Claire Shorenstein, and I'm really excited to present to you this week's athlete nutrition profile on Jason Fitzgerald. He's an accomplished runner, a USA track and field certified coach, author of 101 Simple Ways to be a Better Runner and Running for Health and Happiness, and podcaster, as well as a father of 3 young kids. He's the founder of Strength Running back in 2010, which if you haven't already heard of and read all of his great articles, it's one of the largest running blogs on the web with over 200,000 readers per month. His podcast, Strength Running, is also really awesome. I'll link to it in the show notes. You should check it out. I had the honor of being a guest on that show about 2.5 years ago to talk all about running and pregnancy. Just to name a few of his running accomplishments, he got a PR at the Philadelphia Marathon of 2:39:32. Whew, that's fast. And he was the first place winner at the 2011 Moraine Hills Half Marathon, the 2012 Maryland Warrior Dash, and the 2013 Potomac River Run Marathon. He has been running competitively since 1998 and ran for Connecticut College. He was also named Men's Running Influencer of the Year back in 2017, and he's now living in Colorado with his family. So I'm really excited to talk to Jason and hear all about what he has to say about nutrition, his diet, and how it's evolved. Just remember that the point of these athlete profiles is to share one person's story. So I want these to be inspiring and motivating and interesting to you, but just keep in mind that what works for one person may not work for you. And one last disclaimer, all information provided is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not replace individual medical and nutrition recommendations. I'm trying to keep this podcast ad-free and sponsor-free, so if you are enjoying it, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts, and consider visiting my Patreon page and making a donation. I'd love any support that you can provide. All right, let's chat with Jason. Hey, Jason, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So we met back in, I believe, 2015 at an endurance conference in Princeton. And since then, we've kept in touch and we've done some podcast exchanges. So now it's my turn. But I believe the last time we spoke on a podcast was for your podcast, Strength Running, which everyone should check out, of course, and I'll link to. And that was all about pregnancy and running. And the funny thing is, as I was just mentioning to you, is I think I'm about the same amount of pregnant right now. I'm 32 weeks right now at the time of this recording as I was when I was on your show. So
I'm not sure why I'm always making this hard on you, Claire.
It's all good. It's all good. So let's talk about you. I want to hear all about, obviously, your diet, nutrition, your training, all that good stuff. So let's begin. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you first got into running and later coaching?
So I started running as a freshman in high school, and I ran cross country, indoor track, outdoor track, all 4 years. And then I went to college and I did the same for all 4 years of college. And I really got kind of obsessed with running within the first month or two of being a runner. I think it was, the seeing all that improvement and seeing myself get faster, and then being around a fun team that valued hard work, but also they just had a lot of fun and they were funny guys on the team. I really respected my coach. And so it was a great environment for a new runner to get addicted to the sport. But, I actually went out for cross country thinking that it was like track and field and I could actually just do all of the field events. And I really wanted to high jump. But, as you can imagine, I showed up to cross country and very quickly realized that all you do is running. And thank God the team was fun and the coach was really great because I stuck with it. And, it was just one of those things where, you start seeing your times drop and you keep putting in the work. And I kept thinking to myself, well, how long can I do this? How fast can I get? And it was that question that really propelled me to see what I could do as a runner for, about 2 decades now. So, it wasn't, a big splash into running when I first started, but at the same time, I've just been so consistent with it that, it's like, the gift in my life that just keeps on giving.
Yeah, absolutely. And consistency really is extremely important, right? You don't want to see someone have this, quick shoot up and then burn out and then you never see them again. So that's definitely the way to go. Now, I know you're based out of Denver, Colorado now. Did you grow up in that area? Were you active as a kid before high school, or what did that all look like?
No, I actually grew up in Massachusetts, right outside Boston. And I would say I had a fairly average childhood. I remember playing outside a lot, but at the same time, I remember watching a lot of TV as a kid. I was a
Hmm.
typical kid in the 80s and 90s that grew up on Alien and Predator and all kinds of movies that I probably shouldn't have been watching as a 10-year-old. But, I played basketball a lot. We had a hoop outside of our house, and all the neighborhood kids would always be around and would play basketball and run around and kind of run through the neighborhood. And so I guess I was moderately active, and I really don't think like that really led to any success in running. Maybe a little bit of genetic talent that I had, but for me it was just I wanted to do a sport because I wanted to stay busy. I didn't want to go into high school and all of a sudden have nothing to do after school. So for me, that's how I got started. And after high school in Massachusetts, I went to college in Connecticut, where I went to Connecticut College.
Hmm.
But I did a lot of my training in Washington D.C. in Rock Creek Park, and that was just such an incredible training venue because it has almost everything you could want. There's technical trails, there's really easy trails, it's really hilly in some areas. You can get on the road, you can stay on flat terrain, and you could go in there and do a 20-mile run without repeating any of those trails. So I've always really loved exploring as a runner, and that's one of the things I still look for today.
And what was the food scene like in your house growing up?
I would say very average.
Okay.
I would say we were not really foodies. I don't think my family really paid too much attention to, exactly what we were eating. Sometimes we were short on time and stuff would be microwaved out of the freezer. So yeah, I don't think the diet of my childhood was particularly great or even particularly bad. It was very average.
Did you notice any big changes in your nutrition, your diet, the way that you approached food when you started racing a little bit more competitively in high school and college?
I would say it actually didn't really change at all until the very end of my college career. And
Hmm.
it was because I got a blood test at the doctor's and it showed I had borderline high cholesterol.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I'm a pretty small guy. I'm 5'7", about 130 pounds, and I have the very typical marathoner build. And for me at that time, it was like this slap in the face, like, wow, I'm not immortal and I'm actually destructible. So maybe I should make some changes in my diet. So yeah, I tried to eat a little bit more fruits and vegetables. I cut out some of the French fries and other crap I was eating. When I was in college, 2002 through 2006, we very much lived by the rule that if the furnace is hot, it'll burn anything. And
Sure.
we were running, I was running 80 to 85 miles a week. There were guys on the team running more than that and doing hard workouts and races. So none of us really cared what we ate. We wanted to eat good food, but on top of that, we added on whatever, we really wanted to eat. But yeah, I kind of got a little bit scared of that, even though it wasn't technically high. It was borderline high. I think it was around
Hmm.
210, 220 was my total cholesterol level. And I decided to cut out some of the crap food that I was eating because it definitely wasn't great, and try to eat a little bit more of the foods that have been shown to lower your cholesterol levels. So things like oatmeal and I think apples and almonds, I think. So, that's what I try to do a little bit of that today. And I certainly don't eat as much crap as I used to.
Sure. Okay. And so your team didn't have any like support for nutrition. Your coach wasn't talking to you guys about anything, or you didn't have like a team dietitian or anything like that.
No. So first it was Division 3, so we didn't have the
Okay.
resources of a
Got it.
Division
Got it.
1 team. But no, I mean our coach again kept it very basic. He was a running coach and not a dietitian or anything like that. So he was telling us to, eat more vegetables, and you probably don't want to eat a steak the night before a race.
Yeah. Okay. Good advice. All right. How has everything evolved since then with food and nutrition and your training? You were talking about, a little bit of genetics. I mean, you're a 2:39 marathoner. Obviously, there's a lot of hard work that goes into that, but clearly there's quite a bit of genetics in there, I would say. I mean, that's pretty fast. But what are things looking like these days for you? I know you founded Strength Running. That's kind of one of your big focuses, and kind of how you got into coaching and how everything kind of evolved after college.
I'll give you the story here. So in 2006, I graduated from college, and I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, but I was working in the accounting department at Wayfair, which is a Boston-based company, and they used to be called CSN Stores. And while I liked everyone I worked with, I didn't really like the job. And so I kind of spent my lunch break in Barnes and Noble reading through books on entrepreneurship and personal finance, and just kind of thinking to myself, I don't want to be doing this for the next 40 years. How do I not do that? And so the job also kind of gave me this idea to start an online business, because Wayfair was originally started out of the two founders' living room, and it was two websites, and it was started very simply and grew from there. So I thought to myself, hey, why can't I do something similar? Maybe I'm not going to build $1 billion business, but let me just do this so that I don't have to work in accounting for the rest of my life, because that sounds very boring to me.
Yeah, me too.
And in 2007, I bought the domain name strengthrunning.com. I thought it sounded really cool. Not that I, had any affinity for being strong or strength training or anything like that, but, being a strong runner was obviously very attractive to me. Mm-hmm. I didn't do anything with the domain for a while, even though I knew I wanted to somehow maybe coach people, be involved in the running community and industry in some other way. So I didn't do anything with it until 2009, where I put up just a static website. There was no blog, there were no podcasts or updated videos or anything like that, and nothing happened. I heard crickets for an entire year. The old adage, "If you build it, they will come," is certainly not true. So in 2010, I redesigned the website. I set it up so that there was a blog, and I committed to writing twice a week for the website. And it really grew from there. Like, it was kind of beyond my expectations with my ability to, grow the audience. And I connected with other people kind of in the community. And it's been so rewarding and great. And that was also a time in my life where my running was going really well. I got married in 2011. 2011 was also when I ran my marathon PR. I won a half marathon. And then in 2012, I won a Warrior Dash, which was very surprising and kind of different for me. But yeah, that was a great time for me and for strength running. And it's continued to grow and kind of snowball over time. So that's the story of strength running and how it kind of came about. And today we have, I think we have over 100,000 email subscribers. We get about 200,000 readers a month or so. Mm-hmm. And, the podcast has been really growing over the last 2 years or so. And so I think now, it's just such a great way for me to connect with my audience. And I don't think, I don't think I could do what I do now without the podcast. So I'm really happy that I started it. And it's just been a great way for me to stay in touch with people that, I've met along the way. Like, we wouldn't be talking right now if it weren't for podcasting. So it's been a great medium.
And you are prolific. I mean, I get your emails with all the information that you put out there. And I think I read in a recent one that, this isn't like some superficial article that you'd read in some whatever magazine, and it's true. I mean, you are prolific and put out quality stuff. So kudos to you. Everyone should definitely check your stuff out. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks so much, Claire. One of the things that I try to do is to remind my readers that anything you see on strength running is filtered through the prism of my own training and coaching philosophy. Because one of the things that really drives me crazy about going to like a huge site like Runner's World, even though Runner's World is great, don't get me wrong, I love Runner's World, is the problem is they have so many writers and they don't have a unifying philosophy.
Yeah.
So you might read one article that talks about, you can run a marathon on 20 miles a week. And it's this run less, run faster lifter idea. And then you click over to another article and it talks about the value of high mileage. And if you really want to reach your potential, you have to be consistent with continually boosting your volume. And you're left wondering, well, which one is accurate?
Sure.
Where's the nuance here? Where's the shade of gray, And so that's what I try to do with my audience, is really to make sure that, they're not being confused with conflicting messages, and they're getting, one unified training philosophy that is more nuanced and that does have those shades of gray present, so that they know when it's good to apply it and when it might not be such a good idea. But yeah, thanks for noticing. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and you work with individuals as well, right?
Yes, I work with a small group of runners. I have a one-on-one coaching program for them. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's bring things back to nutrition. We got a little sidetracked, although of course I knew that this discussion was going to be a little bit more training focused with you, since that's your jam. In terms of diet and all that good stuff, post-college, so as you were in kind of, I guess, I don't know if you would call it your peak, or, when you were PRing, winning races, all of that, like what was your nutrition looking like at that time? You had just gotten married. I guess you hadn't had kids quite yet, right?
Right. I had my first kid in 2013.
Okay.
So I would say that, the years between, say, 2007 through maybe about 2014 were, my typical diet. But, I learned a lot more about it. I started reading Michael Pollan books and other diet books, and realized that, there's a lot of potential with performance improvements with your diet. So I did start, improving my diet, just eating more plants, cutting out more of the processed foods. And then I'd say in 2014, 2015, that's when I partnered with Ann Monty. She's another registered dietitian, to create a nutrition program for runners. And I wanted to kind of, create a program through the lens of both a registered dietitian who works with athletes and a performance-oriented running coach.
Yeah.
And so that's what we were able to do together. And that process really helped some of my thoughts on nutrition really come together and become a little bit more formalized, and also, more nuanced. So I think I have a better understanding of how to structure a really good diet for a runner at this point. So it's become, it's a gradual process over time. And, where I'm at right now, I think I have it pretty much figured out, even though, it's still very hard to execute.
Sure.
I wouldn't say that my diet is perfect today, nor do I even really try to make it perfect.
I don't think the perfect diet ever exists for anybody. But yeah, I mean, I've seen some of your materials with Anne, and it looks awesome. Just for our listeners, can you share a little bit about your collective nutrition philosophy that you share in that program?
Sure. So it's centered around this idea called intuitive eating, and it's a way that you can structure your diet. And when I say diet, I just mean the foods that you eat. I don't mean that you're on a formal diet. You're not trying to cut calories or lose weight or anything like that. But just of the foods that you eat, we don't necessarily have to count calories, measure our food, weigh our food, assign scores or numbers to the types of foods that we're eating, because those things are really terrible for adherence rates. No one is going to, constantly score their food or count calories in perpetuity. That is one of the quickest ways to fall off track when it comes to healthy eating. So what we tried to do was to create a series of big picture principles or lessons that runners can then apply to their eating and their diet, so that, they get 95% of the way there. And we're proud that, we don't make you count calories or do any of the, analytical stuff about your food, because I don't think anybody really wants to do that.
No.
So it's very much focused on intuitive eating with a focus on plant-based foods, healthy sources of animal products, things like that. And we also do a big focus on fueling, because fueling is a little bit different than your nutrition. I'd say your nutrition is your diet, what you eat on a day-to-day basis, whereas fueling is how you are actually getting the fuel for your workouts, long runs, and races. From there, you can take some more liberties with what you're eating. So, a gel is basically just sugar. And, that is a fine thing to eat at mile 20 of a marathon, but you don't want to be snacking on gels at the kitchen table for dinner.
Absolutely.
That's not the way to do it.
Yeah.
So, there's some ways of structuring your fueling depending upon, the type of workout that you're doing, how long you're running, or the race that you're running too. And so we kind of wrap that all together in one Nutrition for Runners program.
Awesome. That sounds very much in line with what I do with my clients as well. So that's always good to hear. And so let's, while we're on the topic of sports nutrition, talk to me a little bit about, what your sports nutrition looks like, whether it was, I imagine even back in high school and college, you had to be using something, right, to kind of get through all these workouts and races and everything, or were you not doing anything? Did that start later on?
Yeah, funny enough, we didn't really do much in high school or college. And I wouldn't say my training was really difficult until college. It wasn't until college that I started running more than 50 miles a week. The workouts in college were just grueling and much longer compared to what we did in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then the long runs too went from, maybe about 10 or 11 miles upwards of I think the longest one I did in college was 16 miles, but you had guys doing 20-mile long runs just as they were getting ready for 8K cross country.
Yeah.
So I remember the only thing that we did occasionally was at the tail end of my college career, we would mix up a post-run, recovery drink.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like some protein, but a lot of complex carbohydrates and electrolytes and vitamins. So pretty basic stuff. I think it was called Endurox.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even use that anymore. I really would just rather eat some food than shell out a lot of money for a powder or a bar or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, post collegiately, I had to really think more about my fueling when I started running half marathons and marathons, because those races are just really long.
Yeah.
And they're unlike anything we raced in college. You can go on a 20-mile run and not necessarily eat or drink anything if you have a fairly low sweat rate and you fuel up beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're starting to do those long runs with goal marathon pace running, and you're trying to train your body to process fuel while you're running, it does become important to eat some stuff, some gels or blocks or chews or whatever you might enjoy while you're out there running. And so I started having to take that a lot more seriously, because my first marathon was in 2008. It was the New York City Marathon. And I had the most typical cliched experience where I felt great through 20 miles. I hit that wall so hard, like you wouldn't believe, Claire.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just got slower and slower and slower until the finish line. And it was the classic bonk. I hit that wall, and I realized that if I wanted to be better at running marathon, I really needed to figure out this fueling thing. And so, in 2011, it took me about 3 years to come back from that pretty tough experience of running that first marathon.
It's brutal.
I did. Yeah, I figured it out. I finally figured out this fueling issue, and I PR'd by, I think it was about 5 minutes or so, and that's when I ran 2:39, and that's really goes to show you the power of fueling appropriately. Yeah. And I don't think the entire 5 minutes was due to me just fueling better. A lot of it was training related, but I didn't hit the wall nearly as hard, and I barely slowed down. So it's really important to fuel right for those long races.
What kind of strategy were you using? What kind of products, like timing, all that kind of good stuff? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. I was eating one gel every 5 miles, which ended up being about every half an hour.
Perfect.
And so I was, taking about, I think 25 grams of carbohydrate per half hour with mostly water, so that I wouldn't overload on electrolytes. And then I think I took an extra gel, I think around mile 22 or so.
Okay.
And that one had caffeine in it.
Got it.
But that strategy, as well as eating a lot more in the 2 days leading up to the race, and particularly the morning of the race for my breakfast. So I really tried to carb load before the race. The combined strategy of those two things made all the difference, because my first marathon, I had some gels, but not enough, because I just didn't think it was that important. And I didn't carbo load beforehand, and I felt it. I just felt like I just ran out of energy, and it was so dramatic at that point in the race.
Yeah. Do you have kind of like a go-to, night before and morning of meal that you typically eat, or do you tend to mix it up?
I do tend to mix it up. I'll tend to eat the same thing before like a marathon or a half marathon, where I'll do a bowl of instant oatmeal with whole milk, just because I like some extra sustenance there. And then I'll have more of a carb-centric energy bar and a banana. and that's kind of my go-to morning breakfast. But I'll stagger it a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
where I might eat, the oatmeal 4 hours before the race, the bar 3 hours, and then the banana 2 hours before the race.
Okay.
And this goes without saying, but of course I'm loading up on lots of caffeine before the race too, because you always want to race a little jacked up.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know the research supports, obviously it's a performance enhancer, but my first marathon, it was like so traumatic GI wise. Like I just avoid all caffeine. I'm just terrified of my stomach. So I have a bit of a different situation.
You do have to be a little careful.
Yeah, you do have to be careful. So 4 hours before, that's an early wake up for you.
Unfortunately, it is. And if the race starts really early, then I'll eat it 3 hours before
Yeah.
and try to eat the bar right then too. So, if it starts at 7, I'm not going to get up at 3 in the morning. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's just no marathon is worth that.
Yeah. I think for Chicago, I think that's a 7 a.m. start. I think I did like 3:30. It was brutal. Just curious, which bar are you going for? More which carb centric bar?
I am very agnostic when it comes to brand. I'll probably just walk into the grocery store aisle and look through a bunch of the bars there.
Oh, so you don't even have like a brand that you typically go for. You just like this one. I'll grab it.
Yeah, as long as it isn't too wacky in terms of ingredients or, things that they're throwing in there. As long as it's pretty basic, I know that it'll agree with me. I have pretty much an iron stomach when it comes to a lot of things.
Awesome.
So I'm not going to get too much GI distress from that.
Awesome. Do you have the same approach to gels? Are you just like whatever gel I find and this works? Or are you more kind of, specific with brand for that?
Pretty agnostic when it comes to gel brand too. The only thing that I won't do, the other thing that I do pay attention to is caffeine. So if, gels have caffeine in them, I'm not going to only consume caffeinated gels during the entire marathon, because that's just too much caffeine.
Sure.
That's when you are going to run into GI problems or potentially just, being overly caffeinated.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting that you're like whatever gel. A lot of people are very specific with the brands that they use, and this one works, that one doesn't work. But that's awesome that you have that kind of flexibility. I wish I had that kind of stomach. And in terms of, I know you bike as well. I'm not sure how often you bike, but I know you did a big ride recently. What's your nutrition looking like on the bike?
That is something I haven't really figured out yet, because I'll pretty much do most of my training runs without any kind of food or fuel or even hydration, really. Even when I was running, 20-mile long runs in Washington, D.C. in the summer where it's really hot and humid, I wouldn't take anything with me. And I would just stop at some water fountains and take a couple swigs of water afterwards. Of course, you're starting the run hydrated and then you're rehydrating very quickly after the run. But you can't really do that on a bike because, a long ride, at least for me, is like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And, you can't not drink anything for 3 hours. And with how you can go a little bit harder on the bike than you can with running, just because there's no impact forces at all. And it just seems a little bit easier. So you tend to burn through more calories. And, if you're going to be out there for 3+ hours, you certainly have to eat.
Yeah.
But the great thing about cycling is that you're not bouncing around. So you can stop halfway through a 50-mile ride, eat an entire sandwich, and then just get right back on the bike and keep on riding. So it's much easier to eat while you're cycling. And I'm not good enough or advanced enough or cycling enough to really try to optimize my nutrition while I'm on the bike. I think the last long ride that I did, I mixed in some kind of carb mix into my water bottle, and halfway through I also got a Gatorade. So that was pretty much it.
Okay. And did that work for you?
I think in the future, I'll try to eat something more substantial about halfway through, because I was feeling a little bit low at the end.
Got it.
But for the most part, it worked. I think the hydration worked really well. I just needed a little bit more calories.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what's your training looking like these days in terms of you said you would go out for like a 20-mile run and not take anything on. Are you doing long runs like that right now? Are you training for anything in particular? Like what's going on for you?
So I'm not training at the level that I used to train at, just because, I have a lot more responsibilities now with strength running, and I've had 3 kids in the last 6 years.
Yeah, that's
so
kind of a handful. 3 young kids, I might add.
Yeah, 3 kids, 6 and under.
Wow.
So my life is certainly a little bit more complex than it used to be. My wife used to joke around that back when we were dating, my long run used to really take the entire day because, of course, I would have to get up, I would have to eat and have my coffee. Then I would go for the run after the dynamic warm up, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would finish the run, have some food, lounge around for a half an hour until I did my post run strength or core workout. Then I would take a shower and have lunch, and then it would be time for a nap because obviously recovery is very important.
Yes.
And I wouldn't really be ready to, go out and do anything until 4 o'clock on long run day. And I remember her just being like, "This is ridiculous. Long run day is like a whole day affair. It's crazy." So, needless to say, I can't really do that today. So, I'm not running 80 to 90 miles a week like I used to. I'm more running, 30 to 40 miles a week. I'll occasionally get up to 50 if I'm training for something. But yeah, the training has certainly taken a hit. But at the same time, I'm pushing 36 at this point, and I'm probably not going to touch any of the personal bests that I set when I was, a young man, 22, 24
Mm-hmm.
years old,
Mm-hmm.
training with a team
Sure.
and doing workouts with a bunch of guys. That was a special moment in my life where I really was able to focus on running at 100%. And, I'll admit it was my top priority. I would be late to work and get in my run,
Mm-hmm.
and my boss would be like, "Well, you're late today." It's like, well, I had to finish my workout. And I just didn't care if they were mad,
Yeah.
it was very important to me. But yeah, I'm just in a different spot right now. And I was actually going to train for a Warrior Dash obstacle race.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see how I could do in one of those, but I recently found out that Warrior Dash went bankrupt and all of their races got
Oh
canceled.
no. All right. Are you signed up for any kind of shorter races or just for fun races at all, or no?
Not yet. I'm kind of getting back into shape right now after being on vacation
Mm-hmm.
and not running too much while I was away. And so once I get into shape and I kind of figure out what I want to do, I'll definitely be signing up for some fall races for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. And yeah, let's talk about your family for a second. So 3 young kids, that has to have a huge impact on many aspects of your life. And of course, I know it has a huge impact because, well, I have one, so multiply by 3, I can only imagine. But
Just you wait,
oh my
Claire.
God, I'm terrified. Anyways, in terms of, what does food and, just life look like, but especially like with nutrition and your kids are now old enough that they are also somewhat active too. Like, I think I've seen Instagram photos of like obstacle courses in your backyard and stuff like that, which is awesome. Are they showing any interest in running? Can you hike with them? Like, are they kind of adopting any of the same kind of food approaches that you are? Or, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the diet has kind of gotten a little bit more polarized, because we're short on time sometimes. We'll definitely go for convenience rather than wholesomeness. But at the same time, we'll have a family dinner and sit down together every night and eat, a pretty healthy meal. So, we're really adamant about that part of our family. And the kids themselves, I would say, have pretty good diet habits, with food habits. It's very, you never know with what you're going to get with some kids.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have some little kids in my family who like don't eat anything and they're really picky and things like that. So, part of that is, just who the kid is. And I'm very thankful that my kids aren't that picky. But we encourage them to try everything that we give them.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have a daughter who's very picky and she doesn't eat, foods that are just very normal. But at the same time, she loves spicy kimchi and sardines and all kinds of foods that most normal people don't like. Yeah, and in terms of their activity level, all my kids are pretty active. My oldest daughter, she turned 6 in June, and I mean she's just kind of incredible. You go to the playground, and all the other parents are amazed at how many pull-ups she can do, and she's always climbing to the top of the playground where you're really not supposed to
Mm-hmm.
be, and I'm kind of having heart palpitations down on the ground.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I remember when she was 2, she was just over 2 years old. We had dinner and she goes, "Dad, I want to go for a run with you." And I'm thinking to myself, okay. So we go out after dinner and this girl runs a half mile down the road and then turns around and runs a half mile home.
Wow.
And I had to jog with her right after dinner with a full stomach. I was not planning on that double session, Claire, but
That's
she
amazing.
dragged me into it. I had to pad my weekly mileage by a mile that day.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. Have you signed them up for any like kids races or anything like that?
My oldest did do a 1.5 mile obstacle course race last summer. So she had a blast. It was like 90 degrees. It's up at
Oh my
altitude here
gosh.
in the Denver area. And she ran the whole way, except where, you kind of can't because there was a bottleneck of people. But she finished and said, "Can we do it again?" I was amazed.
I love it. Oh, that's one thing. My daughter's 2.5, and we've dragged her to several races already, including like ultras and stuff. So she's very familiar with cheering for the runners. Every time she sees a runner just like go by anywhere, she shouts, "Go runners!" And when we were in Denver and Breckenridge recently, we were just like on some trails, and I'm not running at this stage of my pregnancy, but we were just hiking, and she was like, "I am a trail runner," and she would just start like running. Now, she definitely does not have the stamina of your daughter, though, because actually, maybe she does now that I think about it, because I think we did, I want to say like a 2 mile like hike or something. But she did not pace herself. And we kept reminding her, you have to pace yourself. And she was going ahead, going ahead. We ended up having to carry her the entire way back because she was like refusing
I
to
love it.
move all the way back. She's so pooped. But yeah, I think that's a really exciting thing about raising kids as an active person and just being active as a family. It's pretty awesome. Wonderful. And I'm glad to hear that your kids aren't so picky and that your daughter likes spicy food. That's great. My daughter calls pretty much everything spicy, which even like a banana. And I'm like, yeah, that's not spicy. But, anyways, what's next? Do you do much travel? You said you just got back from a trip. Do you travel much kind of for fun or work, or what does that look like for you?
I would say I used to travel a little bit more, and now with 3 kids, we, find it a little bit more difficult to travel, and even for me to get away for either business or pleasure is more challenging just because, you have 3 kids, and I feel bad leaving them all with my
Yeah,
wife, and just like I would hope she feels bad leaving them all with me to be the only parent for a long weekend or anything. But, with that said, my wife and I took a weekend up in the mountains to go to a hot springs resort earlier this spring. We spent 2 weeks at the beach on the East Coast earlier this
hmm,
summer with her family, which was really nice. We saw a lot of family. And yeah, we'll occasionally get away when we can. We usually take one, maybe 2 trips a year as a family, and then both my wife and I might get away for one, maybe 2 weekends just by ourselves with some friends or something like that throughout the year.
does travel present any like nutrition challenges for you? Like, how do you approach that? Are you kind of just embracing it and being a little bit more indulgent? Are you trying to kind of stick to your usual approach? What does it look like?
I'm a big believer in moderation, including moderation itself. So when I'm on vacation, I don't care what I eat at all. I'm having a beer with lunch every day, potato chips with my lunch. I'm just going to town.
Hmm.
And then, I get back on track when I'm home. And I think that's really good for my psyche, my kind of mental space where I'm at, because, I don't want to constantly be trying to optimize my nutrition. And the same thing goes with my training. I think I only ran 3 times while I was away for 2 weeks.
Hmm.
And part of that is because we really just couldn't go for too many runs with the way our day was structured and everything. I would probably have to just wake up at 5:30. And again, that's not really something I want to do while I'm on vacation.
Sure.
So I took a very kind of maximalist approach to having fun while I was away.
Hmm.
But most of the time, I like to say that it's more important what you do most of the time than what you do some of the
Yeah.
time. So most of the time, I'm not drinking beer with lunch or eating potato chips all day long. But when I'm on vacation, I'll take those liberties.
And at home, like when you are, home and working and in your normal routine, what are your indulgences? What do you kind of enjoy splurging on?
Oh, that's a good question. I love trail mix, which I usually make myself from the bulk food section at the grocery store.
Hmm.
But probably my biggest indulgence is potato chips. I love potato chips, and really not necessarily fried chips, but even tortilla chips that have some kind of fun flavor on
Yeah.
them.
So you're more of a savory guy.
Yeah, although I don't discriminate. I love sweet foods too. You give me a bowl of ice cream, and I'm gonna go to town on that too.
Does that make it a regular appearance in your household, or is your home not really like a dessert every night kind of place?
I wouldn't say no. I mean, as a family, we certainly don't have dessert every night. I might treat myself after the kids go to sleep, with something, but, I'm not eating, like, a huge bowl of ice cream or anything every night. It's more I kind of, think back on my day, and if I've eaten really well all day, then I'm not going to feel bad about having some chips at the end of the night.
Yeah. Awesome. And is your wife active as well? Do you guys ever run together or do any kind of active stuff together?
We do some active stuff together. I don't think we really run together. I think we've gone on maybe 3 or 4 runs together in our entire life, which is kind of funny because we met in college and we were both on the cross country team together. So,
Oh, how funny.
our relationship was born from running. And,
Uh-huh.
she just runs at a slower pace than I do. And, back when I was training a lot, I wanted to go my pace because that was the appropriate pace for me. And
Sure.
so she just did her own thing. And, now that we have kids, we don't have the luxury of both getting out for a run together.
Yeah, of course. And I remember us talking a while back about how, because I was talking about jogging strollers and you were like, yeah, we don't do that because we'd rather just take, turns and have our time running be our time. So that's funny.
Yeah, it's an important time for yourself to clear your head and have some alone time, which the more kids you have, the more important it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, at this point, my wife is really getting into bouldering. So she's going to an indoor climbing gym and getting in, a bunch of climbs every week. And she's really been getting into that over the last 6 months. And it's cool to see her just get a lot stronger. Like, my God, she's probably stronger than I am at this point, which it's not hard to do with these little marathon arms that I have. But she went from not being able to do a pull-up to now doing 3 or 4 or 5 pull-ups.
Wow.
It's very impressive.
That's awesome. I want to circle back for a second to your nutrition program for runners. I remember listening to one of your own podcast episodes. I believe it was with Heather, or maybe it was with Anne. But you were talking a little bit about weight and running, weight loss specifically, and you guys were talking about how you separate it out. And I think you mentioned that you have kind of a separate weight loss and nutrition type of program for runners. Is that right?
So within the Nutrition for Runners program, we have a separate section on weight loss, and we have weight loss specific training plans, because you're absolutely right. I don't think runners should ever try to lose weight and train for a race at the same time. It's kind of like if you're trying to, do really well in a bodybuilding competition while at the same time training for a marathon.
Yeah.
They're very different physiological goals. And when you're dieting and training really hard, those are competing interests, because any weight loss is going to result from a calorie deficit. And you can't train if you are operating under a calorie deficit. So, I think it's better to have a shorter weight loss specific period of time before your formal race training.
Yeah.
Where, of course, you're still doing a lot of running, you're doing, different kinds of workouts and things. There's just less pressure on the long runs and things like that, because, you are kind of dieting in addition to it.
Yeah.
And the workouts also look very different. Mm-hmm. So some of the things that you do for other races are not great for weight loss, or, there's just more effective things that you could be doing for weight loss. So we've separated out into, weight loss plans and race training plans.
And so the training, is it more like lifting and high intensity interval type stuff? Is that what it's kind of more along the lines of?
Yes, exactly right. So the training plans are lower volume, so the mileage is lower, but the intensity is higher. I think we have hill workouts in there, which I think are great for this kind of thing. And the workouts aren't really race specific. There's a lot of just high intensity stuff.
Yeah, and the nutrition, is it slightly lower carb, or what's kind of the approach there?
So we don't actually prescribe, exact meal plans in the program, because we really want you to intuitively, kind of understand your diet and eat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, there's some extra guidelines for weight loss, but we're not really talking about, okay, today you're only allowed 1,800 calories.
Yeah, no, of course. I was just curious, and it's something I wanted to at least touch upon, because I'm sure you get a lot of runners coming and saying the same thing, that a lot of people are like, I'm training for this race and I want to lose weight. And it's so common. So I am really glad to see that you guys are differentiating between those two goals. And I'm really trying to kind of espouse that whole thing with my clients as well. So I know you're really super busy with strength running and your podcast. Are there any other projects that are kind of on the horizon for you or anything you kind of like to share with my listeners?
Oh man, Claire, there's so many projects that I have on the horizon.
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I'm working on right now is a video course that I'm going to be talking more about in the next couple weeks. And so, any subscribers to my email list will be the first ones to hear about that. It's a really, really cool program. I partnered with a video production company to put it together, and I was being filmed with a camera that cost $50,000. It was kind of incredible.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's the same camera they'll use for movies and things like that. And so the footage is just gorgeous. We spent a lot of time filming up in the mountains. We hired a pro runner to do a lot of work on the track, different demonstrations and just filming them running very fast. And the runner that we used, she just has gorgeous running form. So the course itself is just visually stunning, and I'm really excited about it. For nutrition specific stuff, which I know your audience is really into, we do have a nutrition course at strengthrunning.com/nutrition. And we talk a lot about the same concepts that we talked about today, things like intuitive eating, and more specifically, some of the big mistakes that I think runners make with their diets, things that can either set them back, or, they're wondering why they hit a plateau with any of their goals. And a lot of the times they're just making some common mistakes.
Yeah, awesome. And when can we expect to see the video course released?
That's a good question. It's not entirely up to me because I think the editing is being finalized, and I'm not a video editor. They're all taking that on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it'll be within the next 1 to 2 months from now. So we are recording this in mid August. So definitely by mid October.
Very exciting. Awesome. So we're going to close out with some what I'm calling quick bites, or just a few kind of quick questions I'm going to go through. So answer them the best you can. Favorite meal or snack when in a hurry?
When in a hurry, frozen burrito.
Yeah. What's in your burrito?
Again, I'm not too agnostic. If it's a burrito, it's probably going to be good.
Yeah, there you go. Boom. I agree with that. Favorite meal or snack when you're not in a hurry?
Oh, I love going and getting tacos at a nice Mexican restaurant with a margarita.
Nice. Which brings me to, what's your favorite drink of choice?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, alcoholic drink or any drink?
Either. It's up to you.
Oh my God. So for non-alcoholic, I will go with fresh squeezed orange juice. My God, you can't get any better than that. And because I live in Denver, like the craft beer capital of the country, we have so many great craft beer. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I can pick a favorite, but a good craft beer, maybe an IPA, is probably at the top of my list.
Okay. So kind of building on that, what are your thoughts on alcohol and training?
I think it's mostly detrimental to your training if you kind of consume it in any kind of quantity. But if you want to have a glass of wine or a beer, even most nights of the week, I don't think that's really problematic, as long as you're hydrated going into it and you don't have it so close to bedtime that you're going to bed buzzed, because that might interfere with your sleep. But generally speaking, if you have a big race coming up, like, let's abstain and just focus on good sleep and nutrition and your training. But, if you're just training, without the race looming right in front of you, I don't think there's anything wrong with going out and having a drink or two.
Awesome. Favorite post-race or post-long run meal?
I will use my favorite post-marathon meal, which, if there's ever a time to take liberties, it is with that meal.
Absolutely.
And after most of my marathons, I will crave a burger with cheese and bacon, fries, and a beer.
Yum.
So good.
So good. If you could share a meal with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh my God, that is just a mind-blowing question. Anyone dead or alive. I'm kind of a history buff, and I majored in political science when I was in college. So I might want to sit down with some of the framers of the Constitution and just talk about what it was like at that time to write up those documents, like the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights a little bit later, and just talk about, what was the environment like in the country? What was the climate like?
Mm-hmm.
That to me is just so interesting.
Awesome. So I forgot to ask if you even cook at all, but my question is, biggest cooking catastrophe or maybe success if you're an amazing cook. I'm not sure.
Oh God. So I really destroyed Thanksgiving 2 years ago.
That's sad.
Here, let's publicize it. We were only going to have, I think, two friends and my sister over for Thanksgiving here in Denver, and so I wasn't going to cook like a huge turkey, and so instead I got a pheasant, and I was going to make bacon wrapped pheasant in the oven, and I just overcooked it, and it was dry and terrible. And I just really botched that meal, and it was kind of embarrassing because it's Thanksgiving. It's like
Yeah.
the one meal that you got to pay attention to and cook the right way. And I really messed that up. And so I think it's just very difficult baking anything, whether it's a baked good or even just, roasting something in the oven here in Denver because of the altitude. It kind of messes with the baking times a little bit. So I'm still getting used to that, even though I have been here for about 5 years.
Got it. Okay. Were you able to replace it with like a rotisserie chicken or anything else? Or were you guys just like meatless that night?
Oh no, we're talking, this is like 4 o'clock on
Oh
Thanksgiving. Like, eat a
no.
dry bird or you can go to bed hungry.
Oh, that's so sad. Oh well. Live and learn. How do you like your eggs cooked?
I would say either over easy with some toast to dip in that wonderful gooey yolk, or scrambled eggs on an everything bagel.
All right. Most bizarre or exotic food that you've ever tried?
Oh, I'm a big fan of exotic meats. I'll try pretty much anything. I've had wild boar, elk, venison, kangaroo, frog legs. I'm probably forgetting a couple weird things that I've eaten, but you put it in front of me and I'll try it.
Very nice. What foods remind you of growing up? What are your comfort foods?
Oh, so half of my family is Italian, and my grandfather immigrated here from Italy when he was a teenager, and so a lot of Italian foods bring back, just memories of being at my grandparents' house, cooking together. Andrea Bocelli is playing on the radio, that kind of a scene, and so I would have to say, just pasta and meatballs, of course, with my grandmother's sauce. And a paella. A paella is basically a zucchini flour pancake. It's almost like a latke, except it has zucchini in it, and it's just fried in a pan.
That sounds delicious. I want one.
Oh, they're amazing. She used to make them in the kitchen and then put them on a plate next to her. And me and my cousins, we would sneak into the kitchen and just steal them off the plate.
Yum.
So the pile of these paellas never got any bigger, and it just got smaller and smaller as she was cooking them.
Yeah.
And she'd always be yelling at us in Italian, which is one of my favorite memories.
Have you tried making them at home?
I haven't. My sister has, and she's going to pass on the recipe to me soon.
Nice. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Cookies and cream.
Me too.
So good. I mean, come on, you put cookies and ice cream, you're really combining two different desserts here.
Every single time I go to an ice cream shop, I literally try all the different flavors thinking this time I'm going to branch out, and then I always get the cookies and cream. I'm so boring.
You know what I also like is coffee ice cream with cookies in it. So it's like coffee ice cream with Oreos in it. So good.
Mm-hmm. Which carbs can you not live without?
All of them.
Good answer.
yeah, I don't know. I could probably skip pancakes for the rest of my life, and that's probably heresy to a lot of people, but I'm more of a French toast guy myself.
Got it. Top 3 items of gear that are most essential to your active lifestyle.
Oh, let's go with my 1-inch split leg short shorts. That's probably what I absolutely need for running. And, I really like my watch. I've kind of avoided having a smartwatch for a really long time. And I think runners have to be careful with over relying on all the metrics that their watch spits out at them these days. But, I have a Coros multi-sport watch, and it tracks steps, it tracks my sleep, and you can use it for any bike rides that I go on or trail runs. And so it's very versatile, and I found that I really like it.
Nice. And last but not least, who are you most excited to interview next on your podcast?
Let's see. So I recently read a book called Range by, the author. I'm going to get the author wrong because it's Epstein, but it's not the weirdo Epstein who's been in the news a lot. Is it David Epstein? Now I can't remember. But anyway, it's Range by an author whose last name is Epstein. And it's talking about how generalists can thrive in a specialized world. And it's not about running whatsoever, but I'm really hoping I can get him on the podcast to talk about, how this can be applied to athletics, because this guy used to be a sports journalist. And, this is his first athletics-oriented book. And so I know that that is more of his background. And so I'm really looking forward to talking with him in the future on the podcast. And in less than a week, I'm getting Tina Muir back on the podcast to do some
nice.
Q&A. And I always have such a great time with her. She's a great coach and runner herself.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking with me about your life and growing up and your career and all that great stuff. Where can everyone find you on your website, your podcast, etc.?
Yeah, thanks. So my home base is strengthrunning.com. Strengthrunning.com/nutrition has more info about a lot of the nutrition concepts that we talked about today. The Strength Running podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. I think it's on Stitcher, Spotify, the iTunes Store, iHeartRadio, et cetera, et cetera. And then on social media, you can find Strength Running on YouTube. I'm Jason Fitz1 on Instagram and Twitter, and feel free to connect. I'm always happy to talk to other runners.
Thanks so much, Jason, and good luck with your family and everything, all these big projects coming up.
Oh, thanks, Claire. It was fun talking to you.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Jason Fitzgerald. Again, you can find him at strengthrunning.com, and you should all check out his own podcast, Strength Running. He's had tons of amazing guests that he's interviewed. I'll link to everything in the show notes, so check it out. I would love to keep this podcast ad-free, so if you'd like to visit my Patreon page and make a contribution of any amount, I would be very appreciative. And of course, if you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, that would also be awesome. Please get in touch. My email is eatforendurance@gmail.com, or you can visit my website, eatforendurance.com, to give me any feedback or ask questions or make topic requests. I would love to hear from you. All right, until next time, guys. Bye.